Welcome back to the Whiskey and Wisdom podcast. This episode is the first half of a live special event, launch of the Carolina Collective, a local small business growth community. If you live in North Carolina and own a small business, join the Carolina Collective today. The free community link is in the show notes. Without further ado, I introduce you to Josh Tyndall.
This is going to be part of the Whiskey and Wisdom podcast as well, too. You'll see their stickers around there. So Chris and I are also the co-hosts of the Whiskey and Wisdom podcast. So welcome back again to the Whiskey and Wisdom podcast.
Yeah, man. Thank you guys for having me.
So if you want to know more about Josh's story and why he's up here, he's also on the podcast. Go listen to that one. So we're going to skip the personal stuff and all of the...
Needs that.
We'll skip the cheesesteaks and all that stuff, too.
Wow. Okay.
It is fun to talk about sometimes.
That's fine. Yeah.
All right. But Josh, the reason why we brought you on today is you spoke a lot on our podcast and also in the Carolina Collective already about what it is to take the first step, take the jump into being a business owner and what that's like. So start with just the risk side of it. So let's skip the first step into it because most of these people are here. But when it comes to taking additional risks to scale your business, tell us what that's been like for you and what you can teach our people out here today, what they can do to kind of escalate that.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, I think first and foremost, it's scary no matter what level you're at. Like if you're just starting or if you're 5 years into it and you're trying a new venture, it's still going to be scary. You're still going to have some anxiety and that's okay. I think that's healthy. I think that's good. But also, like for me, when I was starting a lot of this stuff, it just felt like a necessity, whether that was I had too many spinning plates happening and I needed to drop a few so that I could be successful, have my time back, spend time with friends and family and whatever. Or just like I've had with the studio specifically, like it was literally keeping me up at night. Like the idea of launching this thing. And I was like, if I don't do this, I'm going to probably die from lack of sleep if I don't actually launch this thing. And so I think if you believe in it and you believe in yourself and whatever that idea, that dream is, who cares what everyone else thinks? I mean, of course it's scary and there's going to be people that doubt you, that say the opposite of what you think, but it's not for them. I guess, you know, I mean, it is obviously for them, but I did it for me. And because I felt like I believed in it so much and I'm passionate about this thing that I know that other people will gravitate towards that passion and towards that love for what I do. And so far it's worked. You know?
So as a business owner and everyone else here too, everyone knows what it's like to wear a million different hats at once.
Oh God. Yeah.
So for you, how did you know which hats that you need to, 1, throw away, 2, outsource,
Sure.
and 3, that you need to keep on your own head?
I think you can look at that a couple different ways. I mean, obviously there's some things that maybe I shouldn't be spending my time on, but I do really love. And I think there's some seasons of life where it's okay to spend a little bit more time on things that you love, even though maybe you probably could outsource it just because you're passionate about it and you're going to put all of yourself into it. But I think I'll just boil it down to just the thing of like, there are certain things in your business that only you know how to do and no one else knows how to do. If you're wasting your time on, I don't know, making graphic design, we were just talking about Canva and like how easy it is for everyone to make a Canva graphic, probably not the best place for me to spend my time, but no one can make a video like I do. Because of the feel, the story that I'm trying to tell. And so I'm going to get rid of that, the Canva stuff, the graphic design, whatever that is. And I'm going to shift my focus over here because that's the only thing that I can do. And that even goes to when I'm pitching a new client.
Right.
Hey, you sell insurance. I have no idea how to sell insurance. I mean, I'm fairly good at sales, but in that specific arena, I'm not good at it. So you know what? Do what only you can do. But there's a shit ton of people that know how to do social media. Don't worry about that. Go spend more time selling policies, building your team, because that's going to make you money. That's going to get your time back so that I can do this. And that's sort of the same thing with my own business of like, well, maybe I'd rather go spend some time with my son or my family because that's just as important too. Or maybe, hey, this other thing over here is way more important because the value I'm bringing the client, whether that's a video or whatever, needs more of my attention. So I'm just going to get rid of the other stuff.
Yeah. I think a lot of it comes to confidence as well, too. So when I think of that, when you're outsourcing something, it's really scary. At least it was for me when, hey, I need to give this up to outsource it. One, because I don't have control over it. And two, I'm paying someone to do something I don't have control over.
Yeah.
So in the way that I see it is if I know I can focus on something that I can do better and it will bring those dollars back to me, it makes sense. But so to turn that around and make it into a question.
Sure.
When you were doing this, what confidence did you have to instill within yourself, and what kind of head trash did you have to overcome in order to make that first step?
Well, I think I've heard, and I'll probably mess up the quote, but if you can find somebody that does what you do at 50%, then give it away. But I've had another person say, if you can find someone who does what you can do at 80% of like at the level that you can do it, then still give it away. Because of course, like you're saying, like, I feel like there's no one who's going to make a graphic. There's no one who's going to take a photo or whatever as good as I can do. And that may be the case. But like that little difference in percentage, is that really worth the time that it's going to take me to do that thing versus just outsourcing it to someone who's going to do it good enough and the client's going to know no different? Because they don't really know. I mean, they don't see what's going on behind the scenes. And they're like, oh, this is really great. There's captions on this video. It displays the story exactly that I was trying to say. Then sure, it worked out. So, but really it just came from, I wanted to grow my business. I wanted to scale and I wanted to do more. And obviously your time, you only have a certain amount of time throughout the day, throughout the week. And so for me, it was just like, I want to be able to do more. I want to be able to scale. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to do that. And I want to spend time with my friends, my family. And in order for me to do that, I have to let go of some of the stuff. And I think I said it on the podcast with you. If you want to give up, or if you want to go up, you have to give up. So if you want to go up, you have to give up. You have to give up the responsibility. Now, of course, that does come with, you have to set the guardrails. You know, like there's people who go out and shoot stuff for me, whether it's photo or video, whether that's a wedding or that's for another client. I have to give them the guardrails of like, hey, this is how we do things. This is what you can expect. And then, you know, but you have your creative reign within those guardrails. But then also on the back end, very immediately, you need to give feedback. Because then that gives you the confidence of like, hey, this does still feel like our company. This still feels like me. And, you know, the first couple times, it's going to not be exactly perfect. There's plenty of times where like someone's edited a video for me and it's like, we've come back and forth many times, but then the next time they do a gig for me, it's a lot less. And the next time they shoot a gig for me, it's a lot less. And so it's like, just knowing that growth area where it's going to be a lot of friction, a lot of like, hey, we don't really do it this way. We do it that way. But it's so important to like, just give up a little bit of that responsibility so that you can go up, and to whatever that is meaning to you, if to go up and get out of the weeds, to go spend time with your family, or go up to go spend time on another area of your business that's going to make you more money.
Right.
So I don't know if that answers your question, but
it does. The process.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads
It's
me
hard.
into the next question too. And I'm kind of glad you brought it up. It's a great segue. And it's a lot of the questions that we've gotten from the Carolina Collective too. And it
Sure.
goes into management. So to be a little bit more specific about it, for you personally, are you doing more kind of 1099 contracting, or do you have your own employees? We'll start there.
I did just add my first W-2 employee. Which
Nice,
that's awesome. So yeah, for a little while, you know, I just had like my own company, and then it was like I started an LLC. And so now I have 3 sort of verticals. I have an agency that does corporate, commercial, small business work. I have weddings, and then I have a content studio. And so now over all of those companies, I have an S Corp. And so of course, for some tax purposes, getting a W-2 employee was nice, paying myself.
Yeah.
But most of what I do is 1099. Almost all of what I do is 1099. And it just makes sense to do it that way. And But a lot of those businesses, they cross pollinate. I think sort of the people, like
Right.
there's some people that shoot agency stuff, they shoot weddings. And I want everyone, I feel like there's a seat at the table for everybody. I feel like everybody can eat, and I want to bring a lot of people on. And again, like if I can give it away to somebody who does this at a pretty decent level, then I'm going to give it away, and it's going to free up my time to do more things. And it just made sense to go that route. And I think, this is not financial advice, but talk to your financial advisor on when to make that jump of like, is it 1099 or is it W-2? But for me, most of the years it's been 1099. This year, I added my first W-2.
Nice. Managing 1099s and managing W-2s,
Yeah.
I know is very different.
Yeah.
So can you kind of go over the broad sense of what it's like managing a 1099 versus a W-2 to begin with, and then we'll dive deeper.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're different, but they're still very much like, hey, like, again, here's your guardrails. Here's what we expect of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important to trust the people that you're bringing on, to not micromanage them. And it's like, here's what I want you to do. And if you do that thing, then we're going to be good. We can continue this. So not to discard what you said, but I don't think there's a huge difference of how I'm managing them. Obviously, maybe the W-2 might require a little bit more day-to-day, week-to-week versus like the 1099s is per event, or so I may not have to talk to this person for 3 weeks.
Right.
But again, there's still when you jump on the team, here's your guardrails for here's what we expect. And even then for this specific event or the specific day, whatever we're shooting, here's some guardrails. Here's what to expect for this day. And then there's always feedback, and it's got to be specific. It's got to be fairly soon after you do it too. Like 2 months after you do something, you're like, I don't really remember what happened. And then you're like critiquing something that might piss somebody off. Cause no matter what, you give somebody feedback, whether it's good or like correct, someone's going to get offended. It's just a natural thing. We're human. That happens. But if you're specific, especially in the creative realm, you're not attacking their identity. You're just you're not attacking. You're talking about their work. You are sort of attacking, but you're still being specific about what you need and want from them, and you're not attacking their identity and who they are. And it builds that relationship so that you can keep doing more and more work.
So shameless plug for the business planning workshop that we have coming up next month. So with that being said, when you were first looking at your W-2 employee that you may or may not be bringing on, I'm sure that was part of a full planning process of what you wanted your next year to look like, possibly. Is that accurate?
Yeah. A lot to do with taxes. And so now being an S Corp, talk with my CPA, which, Jesse, which some of y'all know in this room, was just like, yeah, it probably would be smart. And like, this was a person who was like constant work every single month. We're getting, a certain amount of money every single month. It's just going to make sense to bring them on W-2. And as long as they're okay with, they were making, let's just call it $1,500 a month from you, obviously you pay them that, but then there's taxes now they're out. But I'm like, it's benefiting me and it's benefiting them for tax season. It just made sense.
Yeah.
Tax-wise, money-wise. And that was, I think, probably the biggest factor, was just knowing what's going to come up next year, which my CPA is great. Shameless plug for my CPA over at Wouters or Wooters, however you pronounce their name. Saved me like going from like, I thought I was going to pay 50 grand in taxes and I only paid 17. So I'll take it.
Huge savings.
Just still a lot of money, but you're like, hey, I'd rather have that.
Right.
And and as long as he feels like we're doing it legally, then I feel good.
Right. So when you're looking at the next year and you're like, hey, you know what? It makes sense to bring this guy on because you know what your projections are.
Yeah.
How do you sit down the year before and start projecting out those numbers, and how do you attack that?
The year before, like last year doing it?
Yeah. So or I guess right now. So probably looking into 2025, what are you looking at right now?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's some so again, I do weddings and then I do the agency stuff, which is corporate commercial stuff. And so on that side of things, there's some retainer clients, which is nice, which helps in theory plan out your year. It's almost like I have a salary because I can say, oh, in May, there's going to be one wedding and there's going to be, this retainer client. So I know I can sort of project what's going to happen that month, which helps me plan. But I think we're probably all in this room sort of like this, where sometimes it is month to month, week to week, where you're like, I think I know it's going to come up, but I'm also not really sure. And, you know, if I don't put my name out there, if I don't market, then I'm probably not going to make a whole lot the next month. But I think looking at that of just like, hey, what do we have on the retainer side of things, which I'd prefer more of that, because I think we'd all prefer money that we can count on no matter what's coming. And just looking at that and what's going to make sense for you in the season of life, in the season of business, and making those adjustments in your business and what makes sense for you. Yeah.
So with that being said, when you're kind of making those plans that way, do you set a certain goal for yourself? And what does that look like? How do you come up with that goal? And I'll go into the next question after that. I'll give you one question at a time.
We sort of talked about this a little bit on the virtual podcast of like, you know, what's a good number for you? But I just really think that just depends on every single person, like what your dreams are, what your goals are. There's some people who are like, hey, I want to make 7 figures this year. But there's some people like, hey, I just want to have my weekends with my kids and I want to make enough money where the food is on the table, the bills are paid, and I'm not stressing. There's nothing wrong with either end of that spectrum. I think that's totally up to you. And I think that comes with different seasons of life. And I think for me, even why I left the 9 to 5 and made the jump to work for myself was in that season of life where I felt like there's too many spinning plates and I got a lot going on. But now I have a brand new house that has mortgage on it, a brand new car payment. Daycare, good Lord, daycare is more than my mortgage now. It's ridiculous.
Tell me about it.
But that was the thing that I didn't have the year prior. So I was like, okay, you look at your finances, look at what you want that's going to make you comfortable. And then you sort of look at the dream side, because obviously there's the necessities and the things that you have to take care of. But then it's like, what kind of life do I want for myself? Do I ever want to not fly first class again? Or do I, exactly. Or, you know, are there certain things that you want in your life? Am I ever going to shop at Food Lion? Or am I only going to shop at Whole Foods or Fresh Market? There's certain things that you never want to work backwards on in your life. And I think at that point, then you can look and say, hey, okay, well, maybe that means 200,000. Maybe that means 500,000. And then it's like, okay, well, based on your business and what that looks like, then you can figure out, okay, how many clients do I need to have and at what cost, at what price? Because I mean, I've shoot stuff that sometimes it's just $500 for an hour. And then sometimes I'm shooting $13,000 for an hour. So it's like, it's very, there's a wide variety there. But also again, you factor in your personal side of your life of like, hey, yeah, I could make $700,000 a year, but will I have any time for myself, for my family, for my friends? Probably not. Mm-hmm. Or maybe I will. I don't know. It just depends on how you model your business. And so for me, it was like, yeah, I want to live a very comfortable life, fly first class as much as I can. Yeah. Buy the nice shoes. I don't want to have to look at the bank account. Like there was a time in my life where it's like, can I afford this? And I want to just walk into a place and buy a custom jean jacket and not worry about the price and just not think about it. And that's sort of where I want in my life. But that's different for everybody. Right. And so I think there's probably people in the room that have that mentality, but then it's like, hey, I'm a mom or I'm a single mom or I'm a dad that maybe just making 6 figures alone is enough for me. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. I don't know.
No, that's perfect.
Yeah.
And I like for these conversations, try to go full circle. And so to take that and connect it, the way that I look at it anyway, and I'm sure it's similar-ish because you kind of mentioned it already, is you kind of have that dollar amount set in your head. Like, what am I worth an hour?
Oh, God, yeah.
Is that right? So is that kind of the way that you look at when you go to shoot something or go to edit something? Like, do you put that in your head like, hey, is this worth what I'm charging myself an hour?
For sure. I think we talked about this too. That's a good foundation.
Right.
But then I really look at more on almost anything I do now, even the wedding side of things, because we are definitely the most unique company in town where we don't do hourly for weddings. We do all inclusive, which means, and the same thing for agency stuff, we're providing value to the client. So yeah, like it may only take me 2 hours to do this, but man, what I'm offering you just made you 10 grand.
Right.
So yes, it may only took me 2 hours and maybe I feel comfortable making, let's just say $250 an hour. that's only $500 in my pocket, but I made you 10 grand. So I'm really more looking at it like, yes, I don't want to make less than the $500, but I knowing what I'm going to bring you. So I'm going to go ahead and up this a little more. It doesn't matter how long it took. Your client doesn't care how long it takes you.
Right.
They care about, what kind of return is this going to bring me? So I think that's a great foundation to figure out what your starting point is for pricing. I think that's great. But again, you only have so many hours in the day to trade your time for money. And which means there's always a ceiling for that. So if you want to scale, if you want to make more money, you can't look at it through an hourly lens. You have to look at it through the value that you're providing for your client.
I'm glad you bring that up. That's actually a workshop that I'm going to do on the Carolina Collective.
Yeah.
There's actually a consulting group that I helped with mispriced what they were charging and what niche they were in and who they were trying to help. And they mispriced it actually too low. They weren't getting the clients that they wanted because the clients they wanted were looked at it and said, that's obviously not going to be what I'm looking for.
Sure. Yeah. You're too cheap. Maybe you're inexperienced. Like it almost sends a message to your client that you're not going to be what I want.
Right.
Now, obviously there's the other end of that spectrum.
Yep.
But I think when you talk to small businesses and small entrepreneurs, price is a very big factor when it comes to deciding whether I choose you or not. But when you get a little bit higher up, it's the time. So how can I package what I'm offering you to buy your time back as the client? Like, hey, I may even still pitch this. I may pitch a thing for you that costs $4,000, and you may even rebuttal it and say that's a little bit too much. But hey, I'm not going to back out of the deliverables. I'm not going to back out of the price. I'm going to do it in a shorter amount of time. And then it also allows you, again, as the client, you can now go spend time making money. Right. You don't have to worry about this. This is doing its thing. It's going to do what you want. And you can go make more money while I'm doing this thing for you. So again, therefore, it's going to cost more. Yeah. It may only take me 2 hours, 3 hours, but it's so much more valuable to the client. And I wish more creatives thought on that side of things, on the value-based side when they're talking to their client. Because again, the client, they don't care if it takes you 2 hours or 10 hours. They just want the product to look good, make them money.
Yep.
And honestly, they want it to be done shorter amount of time, right? Like They don't want to wait 2 months for you to give their video back or their graphic back so their event is next week. They want it now.
Right.
But if you can somehow convey the value I'm bringing you, but also the time that I'm giving you back so that, again, they can spend more time making more money or go spending time with their family, whatever that is, it becomes so much more valuable to your client.
Something we talked about that was very similar to that, you posted about a Facebook group when it comes to just the race to the bottom for pricing.
It's the worst.
When I first moved to Wilmington, I was a DJ and I was part of a similar type of thing, except in the DJ world as opposed to photography. And there's just a race to the bottom for pricing.
Yes.
If I could give you anything, and I'll let Josh elaborate and just go off on it, but do not be part of that race. That is not a winning race.
No.
Just because you think you can get an extra couple sales in here or there and it may feel like a bad month. But even if you do have that bad month, if you took all of that effort that you took on spending the time to do those low paying gigs, I can almost guarantee if you took that time and put it towards finding that right price, you'll probably make more. But go ahead, Josh.
Well, and you're undervaluing yourself, but then you also end up hurting and valuing the industry,
right?
Because then all these other people who are even just a little more expensive than you, they're like, oh, well, I'll just go find it cheaper because I have 75 people racing to the bottom number that it will do this for me. And it's just sad, man. It's so bad. And I don't know. And I don't know I don't know why people do it. I know most of the people that are doing that are the people who are just starting out. They're trying to build their portfolio. And I get that most, big corporations, most big weddings, whatever that is, they're not going to pay the up and coming person. And I'm all for doing things cheaper while you're learning, while you're figuring out your craft, your voice, and how well you can work. But get paid at the same time, man. There's very rare and if I could really think back where I did anything for free, even if I made just a tiny bit of money, I still made money doing the things that I'm doing.
Yeah.
But it's just like, I just feel like for some reason there's been this stigma of like, well, that's how I have to build my portfolio, is just by doing everything for free or stupid cheap. And you're really just hurting the creative next to you and yourself by doing that. And I think there are so many alternative ways to craft your proposal, whatever you're offering, than knocking down the price. It's maybe backing into the deliverables. Maybe it's backing into the time of how long it's going to take for you to finish the project. You don't have to back down on the money side of things. And now I say this as someone who has 3 thriving businesses, and I can say no to clients right now if I want to, but you're going to thank yourself later if you can push back on that a little bit. I promise you.
So I want to go backwards in your story a little bit to kind of put us back to where we are now.
Sure.
And this is just because we've had multiple other conversations. So do you think some people jump into their business too soon and not get the actual knowledge base? Because you had a 9-to-5 doing what you are doing now, where you gained that knowledge. Do you think people are jumping in, especially to the photography industry, a little too soon, saying like, hey, I have a camera?
Dude, everyone's a photographer now. Everyone in here is probably a photographer, honestly. Oh, absolutely. And I there's so much in the creative realm where it's like, just give me the camera, give me the paintbrush, give me the whatever that creative thing is. I'm good. But I think like your talent is only going to take you so far in this industry. If you don't care, if you don't think about, if you don't focus on the business, the behind the scenes, the stuff that makes creatives so bored, because it really is, the admin work, the contracts, the proposals, that stuff is so boring. The email templates, like all that stuff is so boring, but that's what really makes your business thrive, is when you get good at that stuff. When I got good at CRMs, sales calls, scripting my sales calls, when I got good at being okay about talking about finances with the client, when I got good at sales, when I got good at business, then my business thrived. Like, yes, I feel like I'm very good at what I do, and I feel like that's also has taken me pretty far. But those who just jump in and just feel like, well, I got a camera, that's enough. It's not like, it'll last you for 6 months,
right?
But it's not going to give you longevity in your business, no matter what that is. Whether you own a brick and mortar or a creative service, if you don't get good at business, you're not going to go far. And so, yeah, I think a lot of people rush that. And for me, when I was working, I worked at a church 9-to-5. I say 9-to-5 because it was not 9-to-5. And I worked, I wore 10 different hats, getting paid for one of the hats. But I was essentially building the business on the side while I was doing that. And I wasn't doing it on purpose. It just was kind of happening while I was working that. I was getting good at my craft. Anything you could think of creatively, I was working on and building that skill set. And so that it just kind of made sense for me to make the jump, where it was like, again, I was spinning too many plates. This was all happening. I had no time for my family, no time for myself. But then when I made the jump, I already had the skill set. I had the leadership capabilities. I had the leadership management capabilities to build the team so that I could not only just do work by myself, but I could then scale my business when I made that jump. And I'm not saying you can't do that after you've made the leap, but it just made it so much easier for me to make that jump where I landed on my 2 feet and it was like, oh, this is so easy. I didn't have to struggle about the finances, getting the clients, because they were already kind of slowly rolling in, the referrals, even though some of them didn't pan out, like IFG and people like that. But I know. But that's how life is, man. You think you can plan for like clients coming in, they're talking with you, and sometimes out of nowhere, they just ghost you. Like, oh, I was going to make $5,000 a month off you. And now all of a sudden you just disappeared.
Yep.
But, and that happened when I made the leap, but it just felt like it was the right call. And again, because I had already done the hard work while I was working the 9-to-5, it made that jump to being full-time creative so easy. And don't get me wrong, there are some certain months where it's a little harder. December, January, where things are slow. It's winter time, and people don't want to shop as much. They're spending money on Christmas gifts or whatever. But it's been phenomenal so far. And it's allowed me to have time with friends, like so much more time with friends, so much more time for my family. And I have way more money in the bank than I did when I was working that job.
I believe it for sure.
Yeah.
So we are coming up on our time, but one last kind of giveaway for all of our listeners here. What's one piece of valuable growth advice that you could give to someone that's relatively general, that whether you have a coffee shop or if you're creative or you're in finance, what's something that you would suggest that's worked for you?
I feel like I've said this so much lately. Keep showing up. Keep being consistent. Keep showing up to your audience, whatever that is. I can't tell you how many people I've reached out in the last couple of years, and like, they're not people who I would normally do business with, but they reach out to me being like, I've seen you've been doing this for years. And that's how I do business. I rarely run any sort of marketing on social media or anything. It's just merely from word of mouth referrals, or just the fact that I keep showing up and I keep doing a damn good job at what I do. And people see, oh, you've been doing a damn good job for 5, 7, 8 years. I want to work with you. So keep showing up, even on those months, on those weeks where you feel like no one's watching you, even when you feel like, shit, the sales have been so slow this month. You're going to have that breakthrough. But if you stop, obviously you'll never see it. But if you just keep showing up, keep being excellent at your craft, whatever that is for you, people are going to notice, and the business is just going to start rolling in.
I like it. And that's one of those things too that everyone hears and you're like, yeah, I know. I hear it all the time. Keep showing up. But then you have to turn around and be like, but do you?
You got to, man. I mean, like, I just launched the studio a year ago, and it's a brand new concept for Wilmington. So I thought, obviously there's the risk of like, well, this is a brand new thing. It could totally flop. I think it's cool, but no one else in this room might think it's cool at all. But I believed in it so much. And then I was like, you know what? Even if if Wilmington doesn't believe in it, I believe in it, and I'm going to make it thrive on my own, because I felt comfortable enough with the clientele that I already had, because I kept showing up and I knew what I was doing, that people would believe in what I do. And even right now, as I talk, someone's in the studio right now and I'm making money while I'm here chatting with you.
That's fantastic. When I even got into my business now too, the mentor that I had, he said, as soon as 5 years comes, if you can stick it out 5 years, that's where those referrals start really rolling in, where the people start asking you about your profession.
The first 3 years, you're learning, you're growing. It's not the money years at all. I mean, sure, you might make some money, and I hope that for you. But those are the years you learn more about yourself, your business, what your voice is, who your real target audience is, and you really hone in on how to talk to them. And that's where the real growth happens. And then it's like, okay, the 4 or 5 years, 6 years, oh, I can make some money now. People are rolling in. Because again, you kept showing up. You kept doing the thing that people expected you, and you did a good job of doing it.
That's great. I appreciate it.
Woo. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thanks.